Hallo, wir hatten vor kurzem eine Frage-Antwort-Session und hier ist ein kurzer Ausschnitt davon. Es geht ziemlich detailliert, unter anderem Thema Akzents, ob das ein Problem ist und wie man das ändern kann und so weiter. Ich hoffe, es ist informativ und interessant. Bitteschön. The first one is to do with infinitives and gerunds. And the question is, that saying, I wanted to ask if there's any way to distinguish which one we should use, and it's sometimes hard for them. And it gives the example, she likes swimming, she likes to swim. And just as a quick sort of reminder, gerunds are these sort of ing type verbs that get used as nouns in a sentence. And the infinitive is like, to swim, to eat, to be. And the thing is, sometimes you need one, sometimes you need the other, sometimes it doesn't matter, and sometimes it matters a lot. So, for instance, if we look at, we're not going to go into a huge lesson on this. You can do, you can look this maybe up online, just look for infinitives and gerunds. And you'll see, for instance, that certain verbs need one or the other after it. So, for instance, to expect needs an infinitive. I expect to know the results tomorrow. You wouldn't say, I expect knowing the results tomorrow. It just doesn't sound at all right. And so a verb like expect would need the infinitive. I expect to know the results tomorrow. Or we are planning to go on holiday next year. Okay, so certain verbs have to have the infinitive after. And then there's another group of verbs that have to have a gerund after. For instance, consider. I considered staying the night, but didn't. I admit to having had a nice time. I recommend learning English every day. So these types of verbs need the gerund after, and others it doesn't matter. In the example that was given, just find it again. She likes swimming, she likes to swim. There's not a really big difference between the two, and you can sort of use them interchangeably. But then we have situations where, depending on which one you use, makes a huge difference to the meaning of the sentence. So if we take, for instance, Tom saw Sally in town and stopped talk to her. We have two options here, the infinitive or the gerund. If we take the infinitive, Tom saw Sally in town and stopped to talk to her. The gerund would be, Tom saw Sally in town and stopped talking to her. Now they're both syntactically, semantically valid, but their meanings are almost polar opposites. So in the infinitive case, he stopped to talk to her. So one was coming this way, one was coming this way. They stopped, had a bit of a chat, and carried on. That's sort of a nice thing to do. But if we say he saw her in town and stopped talking to her, that means no, I'm not talking to you. He won't talk to her. And that's sort of like the opposite. And so we have to be really careful which one we choose. Sometimes we have a choice. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes the choice is really important. Unfortunately, there are guidelines for when to use which one. I cannot give you a list of a rule that says this is the rule for one, this is the rule for another. You sort of pick it up as you go along, and when you start learning more vocabulary and getting used to using the language, you'll realize, oh, this situation requires this one, this situation requires this one. Sometimes it doesn't matter, sometimes it does. So just to give you sort of an idea about infinitives and gerunds, so that it's a bit complicated, it's a bit confusing. I do feel your pain, but please trust me when I say it will get better with time. Another slight confusion on the next question is to do with proper and common nouns. And it's saying, take an example of a horse. If we consider animal kingdom as a set, then a horse would be a proper noun because it's an... No, not really. This isn't quite the way it works. I think I can get the angle they're coming from. They're saying, well, here's a group of something, and that's a common noun. And then we have one element of the group. Well, that must be a proper noun. But the thing is, you don't have just two levels. You can have a huge level between horse and animal kingdom. You have, you know, horses, warm-blooded animal, mammals, animals, you know, and you can't just say that because one is under another it must be proper or common. That there's no rule about this. There's no logic that dictates this. So what we will have is, if you want to say, take horses as a common noun, then a particular horse, say Red Rum or Sugar, or shows you how long I've been to the horse racing, they would be the proper noun versions. But you can't just sort of say, oh, because this is a member of a group, that it must be common or proper. That's no rule that says that, and it won't help you to think that way. And the last question is to do with accent-free speaking. And they're saying, well, how can I improve my language and speak without an accent? And this is, I can see why people ask this, because it appears better. But I'm not really convinced there is such a thing as accent-free. Everybody has an accent, even native speakers. If you go to England, or UK especially, there are dozens and dozens of different accents and regional variations depending on where you come from. And add in like the States and Australia and South Africa, there are hundreds of native speaker accents. So what do you mean by accent free? Now, often people think of an accent, especially when they're learning a foreign language, and all they're doing is they're using like their way of talking their own language and applying that to another language. And this is okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. The only time I would say that it could be a problem is if the accent is so strong that people have trouble understanding you. Then I'd work on it. But if you just have a mild accent and people know where you come from, I don't see the problem with that. And again, what accent do you want to have? This is a very it's a valid question. Now, as a sort of a slight anecdote, several years ago, I got it into my head that I needed to learn Russian because it's a nice language. I've been there a few times and it really frustrated me being unable to communicate with people. And so I started taking Russian classes. And there's a river that goes through Russia called the Volga, and there's a make of car there. And one time during the lesson, the teacher said to me, oh, you've got a very good Russian L. Now I say Volga. A lot of the people in Germany say Volga. I don't know if you can hear the difference. And I didn't really think about it. I thought, well, it's the same as an English L. And then I sort of really paid attention to what the mouth was doing when we were saying this L. And if you take, say, the English L, and the tongue is sort of on the ridge of the hard palate, you know, so it's a bit further back, which makes it sound somehow sort of fatter. When Germans say an L, the tongue is really behind the teeth, so it's a lot further forward, and it makes it somehow different, thinner maybe. And the Russian version was more like the English version, so I ended up saying, well, I'm not doing anything different, it's just like an English L. And you could tell the people from Germany when they were speaking, because they had this sort of thinner L with the tongue sort of right directly behind the teeth and not sort of on the ridge of the hard palate. So don't be worried about an accent. It doesn't matter if people know where you come from. You know, be proud of where you come from. There's no shame in coming from somewhere else. It's usually a good thing, hopefully still. So And of course, if people realize you come from somewhere else, they might be interested to know a bit about where you come from. They might be interested in your country, the traditions, cultures. There will, of course, be a few idiots who won't be interested in this or use it as some sort of in a negative way, but they really are in the minority. So don't be overly sensitive about having an accent. Unless, of course, with the caveat, it's preventing communication because it's so strong. In that case, just slow down a bit and really try and form the words clearly. And like I say, if you say I want to speak accent free, it doesn't exist. Everyone has an accent. It's just a case of where they came from. I mean, when we lived in Scotland, my little sister picked up, I mean, well, I don't know, she was 5 or 6 at the time. And we moved from England to Scotland, and she actually started picking up a Scottish accent while she was there. So you will adapt and pick up the accent of the people around you. So decide where you like the sound of, go and move there, or watch lots of films with people who come from that area and just repeat a bit what they say, the way they say it, and you will find your accent getting less and therefore more understandable if that was a problem. So I hope that was somewhat helpful. One less cause for concern is always good. Yeah, that was it for this week. Keep the questions coming. We'll do another one next week. Bye for now. Wenn du selbst eine Frage hast zu irgendwelchem Aspekt von englischer Sprache, bitte die Frage in den Kommentar stellen. Es wird auf jeden Fall beantwortet. Und vielleicht finden wir das in unserem nächsten Q&A. Und wer Interesse hat in dieser Mitgliedschaftszeit, in der Beschreibung, da ist ein Link für weitere Informationen. Bis demnächst. Tschö.